reason we do this at night, for a couple of reasons. We're sort of trying to capture some of the magic that was here 50 years ago, 75 years ago, when commercial fishermen would come down here at night, and mostly in the springtime, but probably in the fall time as well, and catch carp and striped bass and American shad with nets twice the size of the ones we're using. And they would be market fishermen. They would not have time for you guys. They would not be standing around here chatting about the niceties of what's going on. They'd be flicking their cigar ashes at you and they'd be getting out on the beach. But we're sort of paying homage to that. And Henry Gardine was one of those gnarly old guys who would be out there doing that. And we're using his net. And that's really the important part of this. Catching fish often is secondary until we pull the net and it's empty. And then you'll really see two grumpy guys if that happens.
The net that I use for most of my seining programs is in the back of my truck. It's 50 feet long, 8 feet deep. And it's a very small mesh net. And what we're looking for is teaching specimens. We want things to talk about. What Henry wanted was 3 box cars full of shad and striped bass and sturgeon headed for Fulton Fish Market. When I asked him to build a net 15 years ago, I said, Henry, we'd like a little bigger net, and his eyes lit up because he thought we were just messing around with these 40 and 50-foot nets. But his fond memory was of catching 16,000 pounds of fish in one haul off crawbucky. I mean, he really was, in Newfoundland, when they had a fishery, they spoke admiringly of a man who was what we might call a highliner, but they called him, he was a fish killer. He was one of the great fish killers. Henry Gardine was one of the great fish killers.
I'm looking for something different.
I know.
We have 212 species of fish named for the Hudson River, and Chris and Wright at the moment, along with me, we're on a lookout for number 213. Something we've never seen in the river before. And it happens.
Big one in there. Keep in mind, if you will, give us the benefit of the doubt.
Wait till you see this white perch.
We never know when we put the net in what we're going to get. We try very, very hard not to waste anything, not to kill anything unnecessarily, and yet there are times, and this, whoa, look at this. There are times when we get things we don't really want to catch, but the river reabsorbs them.
Henry was a perfectionist, as I mentioned to someone before. With a perfectionist, you'll never get them to say something is perfect. Even with this net, he was happy with this net, but every time he saw it, he'd point something out and say, you know, I could have done a little better there. And that's what makes a person like Henry, who was a perfectionist, strive to maintain that level of excellence in the things that he did.
I was born over in Croton Point in January the 7th, 1903. So that makes me a pretty old goat, huh? My mother was so afraid of the water, she said, now you can't go to the river until you learn how to swim. Well, I don't know where I was going to learn how to swim, but I made it. I sneak away and learn. So in order to keep me in the yard, to keep me from going to the river, my mother took all my clothes off, but my underclothes, and she made a long red dress. And the red dress just about cleared the ground. Well, she figured that would keep me in the yard. Well, it did for a little while. Then after a while, I was ashamed to go out. So after a while, I cast the shame aside and I ran with the rest of them. And I'd go to the river and I'd climb the trees and we used to play tree tag. So after a while, a little piece of that dress was on the different trees around the neighborhood. And it got so ragged, my mother got ashamed and she gave me back my clothes, and that was the end of the dress. When I first started, I started fishing out of Croton River, fishing outside here, but I used to come down the Croton River and set the nets out here in the Hudson. Then in 1926, I came down to this place here, and that's when we had the old Shannemock Boat Club house, and which was our headquarters. This was a big coal yard dock then. And I had a partner then, and he was an old-time shad fisherman. So that's how I got acquainted with this deep water fishing, see? So we bought some secondhand poles from an old fisherman that used to be here. And then, I think in 1933, 1934, he wanted to get out, so I bought his half of the business, and I became the sole owner. The first season that I came down here fishing, was bad. We had a bad season. We only had a small crew, my partner and I. And when I came to the river, I had a Cadillac touring car. And things were so bad that when we left, when we quit for the season, we owed a $40 grocery bill and no money. And I had sold the car and put the car in the money in the business. And it was so bad that whatever was left after he paid the workers, he'd take the money one week and I'd take the profit another week. And as I said, I put the money in the business and walked home. And I don't know what the hell I had. I had a very few dollars, but I saw in the jewelry store I had some cut beads that I knew my wife liked. And I think they cost as much money as I had in my pocket, maybe $25. So I bought them, and that was the result of that season. Broke. But we went on. There was other seasons when, you know, you made money. I remember one time I made a pull up there in the cove where I had, as I say, I had 2,000 feet of rope on each side, and then they made this big circle, and then when you pulled it in, we had reels on the beach to do it. That brought the line in. Well, one time we went up there, putting that in 10:30 in the morning. So when it wound up, as I say, it was 13,000 pounds. It was 10,000 pounds of shad, 2,000 pounds of striped bass, and 1,000 pounds of what we would call trash. That is catfish and big carp and such stuff as that. We didn't count that, see. We used to go down to the market, and there was always men there, lots of them that had fished all over the world. They were real regular fishermen. That's all they knew. So they used to kind of welcome coming up here in the river when they knew that I was coming up into the river. And they'd come here and they'd say, "Oh, what a beautiful place, nice and smooth, no weather." But before the season was over, after working, they were working out of big schooners. We were working out of 20-foot boats. Then they realized that this river could get kind of angry. Whereas, of course, in those days during Prohibition, the boats, some of the rum boats used to come up the river, and if there was the load was supposed to be dumped off here at night around one of the docks and the coal yards and places. Well, sometimes we'd be going out on Friday night when we weren't supposed to be fishing, but it was under cover of darkness when you set the net, and then when you lifted the net, we still covered with the darkness. So we'd go out, and there was the boat laying off there waiting for the tide to come into the dock, and the rum boat, you knew who they were, no lights. And of course, we wasn't running with no lights either. So we'd pass in the night. They didn't say nothing to us, we said nothing to them. Of course, you would deem that as being dishonest, but then again, the fishermen, they're known to be crooked. I don't know if I've answered your question. You know, I'm a great talker. You know, at home I'm not allowed to talk, and of course, when I get out, you know, I exercise my privilege of, you know, being able to talk.